The afternoon sun beats down scorchingly on the docks of the town of Chalmouth. Chalmouth is the largest metropolis around this region, a bustling city of over 10,000 residents. It's unfortunately riddled with crime, and rumors of a criminal league running the city from the underground run rampant. The lawful nobility is having a hard time keeping it all under control. The noble High Elves' newest strategy is to put up constabularies and fund ruthless sheriffs to capture the big guns of the underground mafia. One infamous leader of the criminals in the city is a goblin named Stug Goldbrain. The well-kept and well-mannered little creature has a face to the lawful side of the world, being a businessman who sells good in the metropolis and surrounding regions. The nobility, though, have their doubts about whether that's the entire story. The High Elves had their sheriffs capture Stug from a high-profile party, and now the goblin has been kept in a dark room for 3 days. The room is dark to the human sheriffs, but Stug, due to his innate dark vision, can see it clear as day. He sees the table that sits in front of him. He sees the chair his legs and waist are shackled to. The human sheriffs also think that Stug hasn't had anything to eat or drink for a 3 days. The human sheriffs also think that Stug hasn't had anything to eat or drink for the 3 days, but Stug has indeed hidden rations into his suit for emergencies and is unfazed by the 3 day stint of sitting. In fact, Stug is enjoying the time off. He can think about his businesses and affairs, and he knows a large bunch of gold is waiting for him once the sheriffs release him. Despite seeing the room in the dark, Stug is still abruptly blinded by the sun shining straight through the door from behind the two sheriffs. The two large humans enter the interrogation room and open the blinds of the windows behind Stug, lighting up the room further. The officers close the door and walk deeper into the room towards the table and see Stug's face, usually trained to complete neutrality, wince in anger, typical of goblins. His eyes get used to the light quite rapidly though, and his face returns to a curious yet serious expression.
So, Stug Goldbrain, eh?
Asks the constable on the left, sporting a bushy moustache and a very pompous sheriff's hat. Stug answers by raising his brows and shooting a condescending smile toward the pair. The officer on the right, with his big belly and full dark brown beard, continues.
Do you have any idea as to why you're here?
Stug rolls his eyes and replies,
I am here because I was dosed at that slug-faced Jiren's party by you and then thrown here, into your cute little dungeon.
The mustache-wearing officer gets visibly frustrated already and sighs.
Funny today, aren't we? You should be happy that you're getting to talk to people occasionally.
Do you have any idea why you were dosed at Jiren Wishcoper's party and thrown into our interrogation room?
The fat one asks. Stug scratches his head, looks at the officer on the right, then the one on the left, and then back again. Then Stug chuckles to himself and grins.
No, sir.
The mustache man's expression gets angrier, but the one on the right looks relieved. He continues, leading Stug on.
Well, have a look at this,
he says, producing a newspaper. The newspaper is written in Common, a language Stug knows almost as well as Goblin. Horrible tragedy. 48 teens found dead due to misuse of substances, reads the headline. Stug reads the headline slowly and with a straight face says,
How very sad.
The one on the left finally opens his mouth.
Come on, Bogbrain.
Stug's eyes shift to him upon hearing his past name that he hated so much he wanted to be rid of it.
We know you sold the dust to these kids, all a part of the college strictly for elves. These kids were clearly just looking for adventure, and you, ever the greedy bastard, decided to end their lives by abusing their lack of knowledge. No one else in this town can get their hands on Egregian alchemy dust.
The sheriff growls through his thick mustache. Stug narrows his eyes, which are still fixated on the man on the left. The officers take it as confusion, but in reality, Stug is just recalling the events. He remembers it well. 1 week ago, him and one of his henchmen, a dark-skinned human named Bargoisus, were walking through the metropolis's richer districts. They were looking for business. As they approached Marblefoot College, the richest one in Cholmouth, strictly for the children of the High Elves that were most of the nobility in the city, they saw a large party of drunken teens. Bargoisus knew that this was the pretentious sorority of the college, known for pretending to know the streets and the way of life that comes with them, all while living under their loving noble parents' wings. Seeing Bargoisus's attitude, Stuck decided that if they came to talk, then he would handle the talking himself. And they indeed came for a chat. A very posh fellow came at the head of the crowd and mockingly started name-calling the pair. Stug for his size and Bargosus for his skin and the clothing he was wearing. Bargosus was clearly very annoyed at the fool, but a swift punch to the face wouldn't really be enough. Instead, from the pockets of Bargosus's jacket, Stug pulled out a bag of golden dust. The heckler instantly stopped upon seeing the bag. He had heard of Egregian alchemy dust, a potent drug with many effects, but to see it in person, he would have never even imagined. Stug produced about 20 bags of the stuff and sold it to the sorority for a literal sack of gold. After carrying the sizable sack to Stug's horse cart, Bargosus received his cut and was free for the night. He followed the sorority on that night, and to his horror and slight satisfaction, they had horribly misused the drug. They had had way too much of it, and the results weren't pretty. Stug denied all the mustache man's accusations. Of course he hadn't done it. All his businesses were completely legal and confirmed. The trio went back and forth for over 2 hours, with Stug enjoying all of it. The officers were clearly frustrated and tired of Stug's antics now. They were about to give up for the day and keep Stug in there, isolated, for a whole week. Then Stug heard the faintest sound from outside the entire constabulary. Despite the thick brick walls of the building, Stug heard the loud whistle coming from outside. The officers paid no mind to it. They weren't waiting for the sound. Then Stug loudly admitted to selling the dust. He very loudly and clearly, almost yelling his plea for guilt, acclaimed that he had done criminal deeds on that day and should be punished for his actions. The 2 officers rejoiced from apparently finally breaking the goblin's resolve. In the fraction of a moment, the door of the interrogation room broke off its hinges and several muscular orcs busted into the room. They wielded street weapons, clubs, cleavers, daggers. After the orcs entered Bargoisus, just as Stug had planned. Hearing the horrid screams of the 2 officers, Bargoisus and Stug calmly walked out of the now conquered constabulary. Everywhere, signs of struggle were apparent. The gang of orcs had ravaged the building and the few workers inside. Stug didn't bat an eye to this. He had a deal that he needed to close by 6 o'clock at the dockyard. As they were leaving, Stug turns to Bargoisus and tells him,
You know, admitting your crimes really does lift a lot of pounds off the soul.